Hello, everyone. Welcome. Hi, everyone. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining, and thank you for everyone tuning in. We have a great lineup, and hopefully we'll be able to provide some great insights into the future of where engineering is going and what you can do to stay competitive. Hi, Harris. Hi, Jane. Thank you so much for coming. And we'll have a section towards the end to do Q&A, and we had some members submit questions ahead of time. But if you have any insights you want to share or questions, just put them in the chat. And we'll just go ahead and kick things off. Mekki, let's start with you if you'd like to introduce yourself and give us a little bit more about your background and how you got involved with Twill.
Sure. Hello, friends. My name is Mekki. I have been a goofball on LinkedIn for a couple decades now. I have a background in both tech and business, and so my network on LinkedIn looks really interesting. I have journalists, and I have engineers, and I have biologists, and I have, you name it, every profession in the world in my network. And I think that's really cool because we all have so much to learn from each other. And when I saw Twill come along and go, yeah, we want to restore that personal connection where a referral actually means something, not just a different pile of applications rejected. I was really excited. I'm like, I want to be a part of that.
That's awesome. Yeah, we're so happy to have you, and thank you again for joining. Jake, do you want to go next?
Sure, yeah, thanks for having me. Hi guys, I'm Jake. Been a founding engineer at a couple different places, most recently head of engineering at a company called Tenet, where I built out lending infrastructure as well as the team. Now building a community for founders and engineers based in Williamsburg, in New York City. So it's, we have a bunch of founders who work out of our co-working space here, as well as we run a small school for founding engineers here. So that's me, and excited to be here.
Thank you so much for joining. Pranav.
Hi guys, I'm Pranav. I am the co-founder and CTO of Piction Health, and we are building the largest dermatology practice in the world using AI. So my background is computer science. I went to grad school at Georgia Tech, worked at Intel for a few years, and then worked at a company called ByteLight, which later got acquired. And then I started working at Piction with my co-founder Susan. We got involved with Twill when we were looking for a couple of hires for our full stack engineer, which is technically like a founding engineer in our team, since we pivoted to a virtual practice model, and also like a few other folks. And then it was very refreshing when we got a lot of profiles, and then having the resumes and to vet them in a way that we felt appropriate, and then the process of introduction as well as interviewing, and then sort of signing the offer and things like that. So very seamless. And so that's why I recommend anyone who is looking for a job to apply to Twill, and then also who's looking to hire someone to go to Twill to find engineers. So I think it's been a great experience for us so far. So glad to be here.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's so amazing. I really love the word of mouth. Obviously, we're big on referrals and warm introductions. So that's how we also like to add new members and clients to work with. So yes, thank you all so much for coming. Let's just jump into some of these discussion topics. So you're all kind of coming from different perspectives and areas, but I'd love to see what trends you're seeing and kind of like what big changes you've seen happening in the industry recently, which there are a lot, I know. And whoever wants to start can just jump right in, and we'll just popcorn around.
Pranav, you should start with talking about the interesting AI work you're doing.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think the trends in the industry, especially, have been obviously like AI has been reshaping how everything works. Like in healthcare, in like technical, like engineering side of things, in like productivity tools, like coding, all of the things. So I think it has had a huge effect on even within our teams, for example, where dermatologists used to take about 15 to 20 minutes to complete a case. But as we introduce AI in the workflows, it takes them about 4 minutes to do the same case, like because we automate uh, producing documentation which is appropriate with the patient's case, and then we build a vision model that is on par with the accuracy level of a dermatologist. And so it also provides a differential diagnosis to the provider so that they can just select from a list and just move on to the next case. And so that sense of scale, because so we have 5 dermatologists on staff, and then we have about 4,000 to 5,000 patients. But then even if we scale to 10,000 or 15,000 patients, we are still we don't need to hire more dermatologists. It's still going to be the same team. And because hiring a new dermatologist is very expensive, because you have to get them in network with insurance companies and things like that. So it's a big investment. And so how do we continue to maintain the same team, but at like, make sure that we are scaling with the number of patients? So that has helped us a lot. Like, so obviously, and then in terms of ops, AI has been like reshaping the way the customer ops work, like in the sense that like we have introduced a patient texting model to us, so that we can, like, the patients can just text us in a HIPAA compliant way. So in order to respond to text messages, like we are like working on building a few things that will automate some of those, and then that can be customized to each patient's specific needs. Like it could be medication, or it could be any sort of insurance questions and things like that. So all those things are now being enabled by like these LLMs, and then also like fine tuning based on your specific use case. So that's, obviously I'm biased towards healthcare because that's what I work in every day. But then as the tools that you're used to building these things, like for example like Cursor and things like that, which help you like boost your productivity in coding, I think that has been significant in this industry, especially in the last like 2 or 3 years. Oh, should I pass it on?
Yeah,
Mekki?
just
Yeah, Mekki, do you want to take it?
I have had the privilege of teaching engineers and business students at major universities. And one of the things I like to do is take interesting examples and abstract them up to their theoretical principles. Everything that Pranav just talked about is how we're in a time where we're changing our ways of working. The concept of work as we understand it is in flux right now. And it actually happened continuously, not just with the AI revolution. With the beginning of COVID, we saw a change in the way of work that, well, maybe it isn't we drive for an hour and sit in this centralized place and get looked at by managers and then drive for an hour. Maybe working is about doing things in an environment where we're most productive. And that changed how we thought about work. And now we're thinking about how to do our work in the way that's most productive. And maybe that's with novel tools that help us do certain things faster, like AI, and help us notice things that we might not otherwise notice, like AI. Not thinking for us, but assisting us at being better workers. And so if I were lecturing, I would challenge my students, okay, we've got AI, we've got remote work. What is the next transformation of the nature of work going to be? And then maybe I give them an assignment. Or I'd theorize some ideas. And here's one. It's going to be, what does the nature of work look like in an environment where there's political uncertainty? And the idea of having a job at all is in question, while the rich are becoming richer and the poor are becoming poorer. What does work mean in that context? That's a really interesting way of thinking about the transition that we're in. And tech is part of it, but tech is not all of it. Jake, I'd love to hear more about how these things are affecting you and your endeavors.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, jumping off of that, I think there's a couple really interesting things happening, but probably the one that I see the most, because I'm surrounded by engineers constantly, is like velocity of development. Like people, including myself, are able to build things so much faster. So I run a school for engineers. That takes a couple hours of my time in the morning, and I run a startup when I'm not doing that. And I wouldn't have been able to do that like even a year or a year and a half ago. There are now products and features that I can build out in in an afternoon that would have taken me a week or 2 weeks before, and they look way better than if I didn't have if I didn't have a designer 2 years ago. Now Claude Code is my designer. So I think there's I think the way that we build products is changing so much, and the size of teams that you need in order to ship high quality products is shrinking a lot, and naturally that means that the job the job changes. Like what it means to be an engineer changes a lot. It's not like you know like clickety clack on your keyboard. Now you're a designer, you're a product manager, you're a bit of a salesperson. You're really a partner, much more so than I think any time prior to today, in the process of building. And I think we're just getting much more. I think we're getting much closer to the true abstraction of a startup, which is like build and sell. Right? There's like the two things you could do is like you can build or you could sell, and I think AI brings us much closer to those sort of two things that you can do.
Jake, if I might give you an anecdote that goes with something you just said about what it means to be an engineer. I was at the annual general meeting of Professional Engineers Ontario, our regulatory body here in Ontario and in Canada for professional engineers. I wear the iron ring. And the keynote of that year, he said, why is it that engineers have to stop being engineers at a certain point in their career to continue to advance? They have to become managers. They have to start doing technical things and stop being engineers. This was 20 years ago. I think you've just answered the new way that happens. Engineers take on many different hats, many different roles that used to be different things, but we can apply the engineering mentality, the way of doing things to all of those different roles at the same time. And I think that's a really exciting answer to that conundrum that was posed 20 years ago.
Yeah, I totally agree.
We have a question from the chat that I think kind of takes us into our next question. What new AI products are you loving the most, and what would you recommend that engineers are using for productivity or things you're excited about? What's kind of like the latest and greatest that we can make sure our members are tuned into?
Yeah, I mean, I use Cursor all day, every day. I probably use Cursor like 12 hours a day. It's a bit of a sick addiction. But I think also like I've seen people use V0, which is pretty cool. It's a bit more of like a no-code tool that you can then import into your code for building front ends. And Lovable as well. So I actually I built out a demo for a client today using Lovable in about 10 minutes, and it was deployed, and you could just kind of send them the link. And they were like, do you do this thing? And I was like, yeah, we could do this thing. And I kind of just like sent them off the link of the demo. So I would say like Lovable is a really good platform if you're just sort of playing around with wanting to demo something or iterate on something quick.
I need to look that up.
I'm biased because I am a product manager for Watson X at IBM. And so, of course, I play the most with IBM's technologies. And they're not a competitor to Jake's. technology is what he just mentioned. We take a different approach, which is ChatGPT is great for certain things, but we're focused on enterprises and their need for regulatory industries such as healthcare, such as government, such as financial institutions. And they can't just trust ChatGPT. They have to be very careful. And there's regulations coming out on exactly what they have to do that are comparable to privacy regulations and SEC regulations. And those are the clients we're focused on. And so our models, the Granite model by IBM, is all open source. You can inspect the data sources. You can figure out what's going on so you can understand why a given AI example is given. But it's not intended for what Jake's doing. And so we love that what he's doing is addressing his needs. And that's the general answer I always give. Use the technology that fits your user persona, that you're comfortable with, and that adds value for you. If it's IBM, great, you're probably a bank or a healthcare institution. If it's the latest, greatest for engineering playing with, then use that. That's the open source way. And of course, I've always been a big champion of open source.
For me, I think it's kind of similar to Jake's answer. So yeah, AI, I mean, copilots are like very effective on an everyday basis for building anything quickly. And then even again, like I would go back to like Perplexity or ChatGPT just to like, even if you're design thinking about like architecting a certain product or a database schema or whatever. So like, I think those things, having like a partner to just talk through different things with just via prompts, obviously, but that has been very effective for me to like move quickly in terms of system design type of things. Because I mean, you can like one of the companies, again, like one of the tools that I've used is the Replit agent for building like apps quickly to deploying quickly. However, I mean, again, like you have to, if you're building large scale applications, or like if you want to like build a large scale application, it is like you have to have the sort of back and forth in between like what sort of design can scale and things like that. So that has like ChatGPT and Claude has been very effective for that for me.
Awesome. We're getting some questions in the chat, which are also aligned with my next question. So we'll try to do a little bit of hybrid, but obviously like things are evolving so rapidly. There's so many changes. There's been so much going on in the job market and a lot of push and pull between the types of roles people are looking for, what type companies want to hire for, and then all this kind of stuff in the middle. So how are all these changes affecting hiring and people looking for jobs? And how do you see the role of AI engineering evolving over the next decade? And then how should like engineers focus to remain relevant? So basically, what is happening and what can people do to stay competitive, and how should they be positioning themselves?
Yeah, so I do a lot of I do a lot of helping founders with hiring engineers, and I think I think that hiring is, a lot of hiring practices are going out of date very quickly. So the number one thing, and also keep in mind, like I am very tailored to early stage, like up to Series A. I really don't talk to people above Series A. So this is very particular to early stage startups. But the best way to evaluate a candidate, in my opinion, is project-based take homes. So if you there's a lot of things that AI can't do, but at the end of the day, like what you're getting evaluated on, especially as a startup, is like, can you produce products? Can you achieve goals, and can you do it quickly? And so the best way to evaluate that is just like get in the ring with that person, either bring them on as like a contract to hire, bring them on like a work trial, and give them take home assignments. Like if you give somebody a take home assignment to build a beautiful landing page, I can do that with AI in like 5 minutes. So they should, whereas a year or two ago that would have taken forever, and that would have been like a horrible take home. So I think what's actually cool about having AI in the ring now is you can do this sort of like goal-based evaluations when you're hiring, and it's not like horribly time consuming for the candidates.
So you would expect candidates to utilize AI during those and not like their own interest.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I expect them to use AI on the job, right? Like if they're not using AI on the job, then they're going to be really slow, and it's going to be they're going to be a bad employee. So I want to know if they can achieve goals. I want to know if they can ship, and so I'll just give them stuff to ship.
Interesting.
I think for me, I can break it down into like tech engineering hiring, and then like other bucket, which is like maybe something which is ops or something which is slightly non-technical, but they still have to interface with the technical side of things at times. However, I think the common theme in both buckets is basically interactivity with like AI and technology. So for engineering, one of the assignments that we like give our engineers is to like implement something, and then we leave an open-ended component within that take-home assignment. Take-home assignments. I'm a big fan of take-home assignments. I don't like whiteboard coding. Real-time coding is hard. So, but so we leave a component of some open-endedness within the assignment so that they can like bring their own creativity into how things should be designed or things should be implemented, and then we basically do like a walkthrough of that project, like before we move on to like the communication side of things or like more like system design type of things. But then on the non-tech side, what we have done is that how can we sort of like evaluate someone who is, for example, coming from an ops background, to use AI to like figure out how can we solve some efficiency issues with like a system, and how do we interact with certain like tech that you are going to be using on your job daily. So for example, like we deal with EHR systems because of patient records, and so having, as a small company, we are 5 employees, so like as a small company, like everyone has to interact with it, and so that's what one of the components that we have to look for is that sort of, there's no uh, maybe 5 years ago it would have been like very like soft skill oriented hiring, where okay, so like this person is like great analytical and all that stuff, so which is great, which is still important today, but then this component of like using AI on the job, as well as like making ability and confidence to make changes, I think that's something that is critical now.
I'm going to take a slightly diverging but complementary view, and that's a credit to Eliza for getting a good variety of panel members, because if we all agreed with each other, then that would be no fun. You know, we got to have some variety. When I hire engineers, I am interested in their understanding of the first principles. I want to understand how they think, how they make decisions. And in particular, I want to understand if they can figure out from first principles when the AI is wrong. Because it's not about using AI too much. It's about not being able to tell when the AI is bullshitting that's dangerous. And if you understand the first principles of computer engineering, you'll be able to detect those errors and go, okay, I'm going to reject this particular suggestion and readjust to this suggestion. And that applies to all technologies, not just AI. Teachers used to say, you can't do your assignment with Wikipedia. The internet is bad. This is no different. It's another technology. It has its purposes. If you understand the first principles, you can use it well. And personally, I don't like take-home exams. I never assign them take-home assignments. And the reason is because too many companies use them as free consulting, and they take back the results and they do stuff with that. And I have found that a little bit abusive in some marketplaces. I don't get the impression that you gentlemen are doing that at all, by the way, but it's something I worry about. Instead, what I like to do is I like to talk with the candidates to understand how they're thinking in particular ways of their decision-making process for an arbitrary problem. And it doesn't have to be a problem related to something immediate. or related to a specific project. It just has to be a problem that shows the gears cranking in their head and that lets me know that they'll be able to adapt that thinking to any given new problem. And this bridges into a little bit the following up question is, how do engineers evolve and stay relevant in the role of AI? And my view is by knowing the first principles inside and out. The first principles will always guide you wherever AI goes and the next post-AI technology, just as it has before. Know the first principles well, and then you can adapt to new technologies as they go, and you'll always stay relevant. Don't chase the latest, greatest technology, because in 2 years, someone younger than you will replace you, and you're an old dog without new tricks. Know the first principles, and then you'll be building the new technologies and adapting to them as they go. That's the engineering way.
Yeah, I think that's all very helpful because as technology is shifting, it's really like critical thinking skills. And we've been hearing a lot about soft skills for technical roles that hiring managers are almost looking for engineers to serve somewhat as project managers. I don't know if you all have noticed that as well. I remember even just a few years ago, engineering was they were in such a box where they had a very rigid kind of expectations, and it seems like that's shifting. So would you all be able to provide a little bit of tactical advice on how to transition to and develop those skills? Like, what are the skills you need to really be able to evolve into this next phase?
Yeah, happy to touch on that a bit. I think, again, coming from a very early stage perspective, understanding where the value is, right? Like you can ship things really, really fast. So we're sort of for a long time, engineering was the bottleneck, and I don't think that's the case anymore. I think now that with the speed at which you can develop, you can sell things and then you can build them the next day, and then you can test them over the course of the week, and then you can onboard the customer the following week. And I know you can do this because I've done it over the last 2 months very successfully over and over again. And so,
Jake, did you build Twill from the ground up in 24 hours? That's amazing. Good job.
But I think what that means is that the skills that you need are like, how do I identify what to build? Like, how do I integrate into the other parts of the business more effectively? How do I communicate more effectively? How do I sell more effectively? And how do I not just solve engineering problems, but how do I solve customer problems and business problems? And I think that's really what it means to stay relevant as an engineer.
Love it. Love it. The engineer has always had to have that business hat, but even more so today in understanding that value. Love it.
Yeah, I think I totally agree. I think that's a really good point. I think someone with high agency who wants to make a big impact, we just focus on what people want and build that, and and then once you sort of get into that mode of like high agency mode, like, okay, so these are the things that I need to get done in order to build this and ship this, or like so that people will find this useful. I think once you get into that mode, all of these other sort of problems will start surfacing, and the solutions also will start surfacing as well, which is, hey, I need to like prioritize different which features should I build first, like should I so I find this really interesting sort of evolution of a product, which is not where you build a car versus you build like, so you have to build a car, so you don't start with building a wheel and then attach another wheel, or then so you start with the skateboard, then you build a bike, then you build a motorcycle and then you build a car, so that someone, like, people are actually having something to use, versus if you build two wheels and then you build like the body of the car, but then people can't use it like until the car is built, right? So that's, I think, a good analogy when you're sort of building a product from the ground up.
Like that a lot. Actual disruption, and disruption requires doing something different with a different value characteristic first before you can actually replace something with a similar value characteristic. Well said.
Yeah. And we had another great question in the chat from Harris. So we're kind of talking about things that you should have moving forward to be competitive. Are there any, just from your experiences hiring, are there any traits that you have felt were deal breakers, or what should candidates avoid who are looking for their next position?
Okay, I'll jump in. I generally am very forgiving because candidates are nervous in interviews and these things. So I don't worry too much about traits unless I see really big red flags. The only one I can think of is if there are people who come in with sort of what we call the tech bro attitude, where, you know, like, I'm into this tech bro. I detest that, and it's because it creates a bit of a toxic work culture where it's like, I'm better than you, and they don't have that collaborative piece to it. It's sometimes tied with sexism, which we know is a big problem in engineering and computer engineering in particular, and we have to be very sensitive to those things. One really, really good individual with a toxic personality can destroy a team that would be much better than that individual alone. And so you have to think about that dynamic. But honestly, I don't see it that often these days, I'm happy to say.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, culture is super important. So you do need to make sure that the people you're bringing onto the team are they work well with others, for sure. And I think also, just because teams are getting smaller, it means that the people that you're bringing on are going to be a larger part of the team. They're going to be, they're going to be owners. They're gonna wrap around a lot of different things, and so it's more important than ever to be dependable. Something that I've always communicated to my teammates and employees, even before AI got super big, is there's really like two things that I need from you. I need you to communicate. I need you to deliver. And so, it's okay sometimes if you don't communicate, and then you deliver. And it's okay sometimes if you if you don't deliver, you couldn't hit a deadline, but you communicate. But if you're ever missing one of those things, then it just makes it really hard to work with you, and it makes you really unpredictable.
Yeah, I think on the inverse side, I think it's like we look for people who have the right sort of values when you want to start working in a small team, and complementary skills. So you have skills that, I mean, obviously, like in a small company, and as Jake said, like teams are getting smaller, so you want to add members to the team with more complementary skills than like augmenting existing skills. So like the values are that reflect the culture of the company, and especially the culture of the founders, which is high agency, great communication skills, like obviously be nice to each other and not be finger pointy and things like that. So I think those are the key characteristics that we look for and sort of shy away if we see some red flags in that area. So those are some of the deal breakers for us, at least, because in a small company, again, like of coming from a really early stage company, I think like you get hired for your skills, but you get fired for your behavior, and that's like a very typical like sort of behavior pattern that we have seen in small companies. So we want to make sure that we hire for like the right behavior as well, and then skill set, as even if it is like subpar or whatever, like we can still like work through that and then like build up on that.
Those are all very helpful answers. We have a couple questions that were submitted ahead of time, and then maybe we can, you guys can share a little more about what you're working on right now and how people can get in touch with you. So we had a question from someone that says, I'm in between jobs at the moment, but I don't want to waste this time. What are some project certifications, skills I can focus on to make me competitive?
Don't. It's a common question I get. Nobody hires for certifications. Nobody. It's not a thing. Certifications are a plus one if they already like you and it's coming down to the wire, but it's not something you should put your very valuable job search time into. Put your job search time into networking, connecting with people who know you well and understand what you can do well. It'll feel like socializing that you're wasting your time, but that is the most productive thing that you can do. Once you get the job, then you can do the certifications that relate to the job. There are too many certifications out there to game which one is going to get you a leg up. Don't do it. And this is a guy who has hundreds of certifications saying that.
That's a great answer. Obviously, I agree on that one. Networking and building those relationships is so important when you're looking for a job. Does anyone else have advice on that?
Yeah, I mean, I'd echo that. Like, I've actually, the vast majority of the time, I hire somebody, I don't even really look at their resume. You know, for the most part, I'm hiring people based on their communications. Like they usually reached out to me much more proactively than other candidates to have, either over LinkedIn or Twitter, you know, or in person. And you know, when I'm seeing people get jobs, it's almost always because they were very proactive in terms of their communication. Not like, it's pretty rare to see somebody who's just resume spamming or credential maxing who's like getting a job.
Credential maxing. I like that term. That's a good term.
Yeah. And then I also see like a really effective way to get a job that I've seen, which is pretty repeatable, is just to figure out what somebody finds valuable and then to build that thing and present it to them, right? Like, it's if somebody reaches out to me and they're like, hey Jake, you know, I saw that you know, you're building AI services companies, and I went on your landing page and there was like some goofy stuff on there. One of the carousels was broken. So, you know, I made this little clone of your landing page and I fixed the carousel. Anyway, do you have 15 minutes to chat? I'm looking for a job. Like, that's an automatic interview. Like, just immediate interview. If you can find somebody who's like proactive and high agency, and you can prove and signal to people that you are proactive and high agency by doing things like that, you're much more likely to get a job than just like submitting a resume that says, you know, I got the AWS like credential on it.
By contrast, big company hiring looks very different. At IBM, that doesn't work. And it's not because it's wrong. It's totally correct. Is that at IBM, the structure of how jobs are posted is very different. Your best way to get a job at IBM is to get into some sort of program where you're front and center in front of IBMers already. So for students, that's any of the internship programs, any of the you know, MBA practice programs, that kind of stuff. stuff. If you're a career professional, then it's getting into open source communities where IBM is an active participant. It's attending events where there's IBMers and looking at the technologies and discussing them, and figuring out your city's IBM presence, which major clients they work with, and maybe looking for consulting opportunities as a foot in the door, usually with a secondary consulting company first, and then getting hired as a consultant to an employee later on. So depending on your target company, big or small, use different strategies.
Yeah, just to add one more point to all of the things that have been said before, and I totally agree with all of them. I think it also comes, certifications versus projects, like projects are much more like high valuable than certifications. So even if you have let's say a week to work on something, pick a problem and then work on the project. And if you send hey, here is my GitHub link to whatever, and this is how it works, I think that's much more effective. And I think networking is again coming from I was not born here. I came here for grad school, and so I didn't have a network when I came here and when I started working at Intel, because it was like a small team, and then it was only the workers in that team that I used to interact with. Until we got into the Techstars program, that's when my network sort of opened up, and then suddenly now I have a lot of people that I could reach out to and then also talk to about anything that I might be experiencing. So I think building that network is super valuable, and I did not notice the power of networking before working at a small stage company. And I think I would encourage anyone who is afraid or who doesn't think networking works. I think I would encourage them to sort of go and just show up to events or show up to meetups or hackathons or whatever, and that's how you sort of get your foot in the door, and that's where you make connections, which will lead to the next job or gig or whatever.
Yeah, it sounds like the days of cold applying are dead, and you really have to get out into the world, start doing something, start creating something, and hopefully that draws the right people and connects you to the right people to open those opportunities. All right, as we're just wrapping up, thank you guys again so much for joining. I felt like this was really productive, and I hope everyone watching found it helpful. And I'd love to just hear kind of what you're working on that you're super excited about. Any plugs, your LinkedIn, Twitter, or sorry, X, to say that on an engineering panel. Please let us know so we can keep in touch. Who wants to go first? What are your X handles? Tell the people.
Is the question what are we working on, or just post
Yes, and then how can people I can put your LinkedIn as a banner so people can connect.
Sure. Yeah. Like I mentioned before at the beginning, so we are building the largest dermatology practice in the world by using AI. So we've accumulated the largest database of skin disease images in the world by partnering with over 200 dermatologists across 20 different countries. And we are currently active in 5 states, and so we are expanding to all 50. But then we are building the tools for patients and for providers to help them navigate their care journey in a much more effective way. And eventually, dermatology is a huge problem across the world. It's not just in the US. So we are hoping that this would sort of make dermatology accessible to everyone who needs it. So yeah, that's our goal.
Amazing. Thank you. And thank you so much again for joining.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. It's great.
Yeah, so I'll jump in here. If you're in New York City, would love to have you by Fractal Tech. We have a big co-working space based out of Williamsburg and Brooklyn. So a lot of founders and engineers who operate out of here. Again, we also run a school for founding engineers. It's a pretty small school, and we also run a product studio. So I've been kind of heads down focusing on that over the last couple of months, where we build AI services companies. And yeah, if you want to follow, if you want to follow me on Twitter, that works. It's just Jake Zegil. Yeah, I'll see you there.
Exciting. I am the token Canadian in Toronto. And so I'm very excited to see Twill expand in Canada and get all the cool jobs here in Canada as well. I'll be following that. And at IBM, I like to look at the open source projects and what we're doing that people can join in. And one of our newest ones is called Instruct Lab. Look up Instruct Lab on GitHub. And it's a new way that you can make your AI models more intelligent without having 10 billion GPUs to do the computations behind the scenes. And we call it democratizing AI so that you can make them more intelligent just on your laptop with customized skills and knowledge. It's a new open source community that IBM and Red Hat are curating, and I think folks will find that really cool. Catch me on LinkedIn. Hey, you looked up Instruct even better. My LinkedIn,
is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. And for my LinkedIn, it's just Mekki.ca because token Canadian. And that takes you to my LinkedIn profile. And always happy to stay in touch with the extended network. That's what we're all here for.
Thank you guys so much. And if you're viewing and you're not already a Twill member, we'd love for you to join. You can apply to join here at app.withtwill.com. All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining. Thank you for tuning in. It was a pleasure. And hopefully the future is bright for engineers. All right. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers.